You're about to watch a review of the Sony ZV-1 Mark II, done by a person who's actually never used the original Mark I before. So, just the other day I showed this ZV-1 Mark II to somebody who owned the original ZV-1. I asked her if this made her want to upgrade from her original ZV-1 to the Mark II, and she said no, it wasn't worth the trouble of selling off her original camera then upgrading it to this one. That's when it occurred to me that this camera might not necessarily be targeted as an upgrade option for existing owners of the ZV-1, but more like if you don't own a ZV-1 yet and you want to get one, then might as well get the latest one. So this is a review of the ZV-1 Mark II from the perspective of someone who's waited long enough for their first ZV-1 hands-on to be with the Mark II. I risk sounding a bit snobbish saying this, but for once, I'm actually using Scene Intelligent Auto. How nice it is I can walk into the shade and eventually out of the shade without having to worry about my exposure settings. I think if you ask anyone who photographs or films stuff professionally for clients, using Scene like full auto mode, like the intelligent auto mode, feels like a bit of a crime. But for this one, credit where it's due, they've actually made it really intuitive. I heard something in that bush over there, so I'm just gonna turn around and head back where most people are. They have simplified the customizations in Scene Intelligent Auto to a few simple sliders. Like, you can change the bias of your exposure compensation by simply adjusting a dark or bright slider, as well as your color tone. You can set it to cool or warm, again with just a simple slider. Things that would otherwise require you to manipulate your shutter speed, ISO, or iris, or straight up change your color temperature settings in the camera. So that was a pretty nice touch. The Mark II does come with a really nice hardware tweak, and that's how the tripod mount has been moved nice and far away from the battery door, so you can actually access the hatch while the camera is mounted on a tripod. One more major change in hardware that makes the Mark II a very different camera compared to the Mark I is the zoom lens that's built into the camera. The original Mark I came with a full-frame equivalent 24 to 70mm lens. The Mark II loses a bit on the tele end, but gains a lot on the wide end with its new 18 to 50mm zoom lens. This is 18mm on the Mark II with active steady shot turned on. When you turn on active steady shot, there's a bit of a crop. I think for freehand vlogging like this, active steady shot is pretty much a necessity unless you want to look like you're vlogging in the middle of an earthquake. Not sure if you can tell, but there's a pretty strong wind gusting along right now from my hair. So if you don't hear any rumble, that means the windshield, the furry windshield for the internal microphone is doing a pretty good job. But I think one of the most sensible changes Sony could have made coming from the Mark I to the Mark II is widening up that wide end from 24mm to 18mm. 24mm full-frame equivalent is fairly wide, but I think for arm's length vlogging like this, 24mm is cutting it a bit tight. You're not going to have a lot of extra frame around your head to see your surroundings. Plus, again, if you're using active steady shot, you lose even more field of view. So it makes even more sense to have that wider end of 18mm. If there was one huge reason to upgrade to the Mark II from the Mark I, it would be this, the wider 18mm end. How do all the vloggers vlog and talk while maintaining eye contact with the lens? How do you see where you're going unless you have like superhuman peripheral vision? And the worst part about it all is if you do actually trip, you've got a camera pointing at you, recording you trip in 4K. Just trying very hard not to trip over these, or maybe the vloggers just pick less trippy roads to vlog on. This is the cinematic vlog mode. Not something I would personally use, but it does a couple of things. First of all, it burns in the letterboxing to your video, so it's still recording in 16:9, but because of the letterboxing, it looks like 2.35:1, and it locks your frame rate at either 24p or 25p, because cinematic. It also lets you change the color tone of your video. So it's got a few looks for you to pick from. Right now I'm gonna go with fresh. That looks quite saturated. And you can set the color tone to gold, ocean, or forest. So kind of like a few built-in LUTs, if you would. Let me change it back to classic, which I think looks the most natural out of all of these. But yeah, cinematic vlog mode is a thing on the ZV-1 Mark II that wasn't previously on the Mark I. The wind has really picked up right now. Of course, exactly when I intend to film the audio segments of this review. Again, it's really strong, so if you don't hear any rumble, the windshield's doing an excellent job. But supposedly one of the most unique new features on the Mark II is its microphone. It's got interchangeable directivity patterns. Right now it's set to auto, which supposedly when it detects a face in front of the camera, it would automatically set it to front address mode, meaning it would try to reject sounds coming from behind the camera. You can change it while you're recording, so I'm gonna give it a tap, and now it's changed it to front directivity. I'll tap it once more, and now it's set to all directions. There's not much noise coming from behind the camera, but if I swing the camera around, that's what's happening behind the camera. There's a road back there. There is, I think that's a drain, less of a lake, but it should be picking up my voice evenly because it's supposed to be perfectly omnidirectional. And now there's construction from behind. Again, always when you want to do the audio segments, but if I tap it once more, it sets it to rear. The construction's coming from behind me, so I think it's gotten softer in volume, but so has my voice. It sounds more muffled compared to before. But if I swing the camera around and I talk from behind the camera, it should be getting my voice nice and clear. And ooh, that's a pretty nice looking tree. I think exactly for situations like this when you want to narrate over your scene. But pretty neat thing, pretty neat touch that you can change the directivity of the internal built-in microphone. It just occurred to me that this might be one of the best camera choices for automotive content. It's got a wide enough field of view, it's got a nice flip-out display, which you can see there's even a record button conveniently on the touchscreen, so you can easily start and stop recording even when the front of the camera is facing you. There's a nice big red light to let you know that it's actually recording, so you don't do the entire take, just to figure out later that nothing was actually being recorded. It's small and light enough for me to just mount up here like this. If this was one of my mirrorless cameras, I would not feel comfortable mounting it on my windshield like this. Sure, a small action camera could do the trick, but then your image quality and audio are likely not going to be as good as this right now. Okay, driving and talking is actually much more difficult than it looks. How do all the car reviewers do it? Just really making sure the autofocus recognizes my huge face this time around, no steering wheels in the foreground. Now, on paper, the ZV-1 Mark II does not sound like a tremendous upgrade over the Mark I, but I would say that the wider lens alone would make enough of a difference in the way you use this camera. I just really appreciate how this is a perfectly good self-contained vlogging device. If you're looking for something that is genuinely pocketably small, has a wide enough zoom lens built in, well, here's one to consider.